Hello, grade 8s. Today we're going to focus on our lesson on the order of operations. Now, maybe in the past you know it or your parents have known it as BEDMAS. However, I'm going to just change things up a bit and I'm going to tell you that there are 4 rules. You got to follow the rules, okay? So here they are. Rule number 1, multiply and divide before adding and subtracting. Okay, rule 1. Rule 2, you multiply and divide left to right, whichever comes first. Rule 3, you add and subtract, whichever comes first, left to right. And finally, rule 4, you always get the answer in the brackets first. You should have these rules somewhere in front of you if you can't remember them, and you got to follow the rules. So look at the first question. 3 plus 15 times 2. I work my way down, so this is how it goes. So first step, I like to underline as I go. There it is right there. I don't add first, and since I have multiplying and dividing, I always divide second if it goes left to right, multiplying before dividing, and always before adding. So that's the first step. So I'm going to recopy everything. So recopy everything else. So 3 plus, now I can get this answer, which is 30, then divide 6. Okay, so now I've gotten rid of the multiply. Now I have adding and dividing. Which is first? Always divide before adding, right? So that's our next step. So we have 3 plus, recopy that, 3 divided 6 is 5. And now I'm down to one operation, 3 plus 5, 8. That is the answer. Okay, that's how I do it. You got to work your way down showing all your steps. Okay, next one, we have 24, take away 6, divide 3. In brackets, plus 8 times 5. Remember rule 4, you always get the answer in the brackets first. So here's the brackets. Now notice I have a subtraction and a division. Which do I do first? You always divide before subtracting, right? So I do this first. So in the brackets, and everything else gets recopied. As much as it looks like a lot of work. 6 divided 3 is 2. Then I'll just recopy plus 8 times 5. Okay, what do I do next? Multiply, add, take away, brackets first, right? So I got to do this first. 24 take away 2, that's 22. Add 8 times 5. Okay, do I add first or multiply first? I always multiply before adding. It says it in the rules. So recopy everything else. 22 plus 8 times 5 is 40. Now I'm just down to adding. 22 add 40, 62. That is the answer. Okay. Sometimes we have fractions, so 1/2 times 2/3 plus 1/4, divide 1/4. We still have to remember how to use our fractions. So in brackets, that's the first thing. I got to do that first. So I tell students, if you need to go off to the side to work it out so that you don't mess up this our work page, then you do that. So 2/3 and 1/4. I come off over here and I just write that. I like to write it vertically. And we're going to add, right? 2/3 and 1/4. Lowest common denominator, right? When you're adding, what number do they both go into? 12. Change them both to 12. So remember, 4 times 3, 1 times 3. Right? Whatever we do to the bottom, we do to the top fraction. Right? Top part of this fraction. Now here, it was 3 to a 12, so that's a times 4. So 2 times 4 is 8. Right? So 3 times 4, 2 times 4. Now I can add. When you add, you always keep the bottom and you simply add the numerators. So 11. Okay, so now I can keep my space nice and clean. Recopy everything else. So 1/2 times 11/12 divide 1/4. Okay, what goes next? Multiply or divide? This is the next step, right? And I can just kind of do this right here because remember multiplying, I'm looking for bikini numbers. I look for a top and a bottom that I can cancel out, but I don't have any. So basically, I just go 1 times 11 and 2 times 12. So the answer is 11 over 24 divide 1/4. So I'm down to one step. Now, when I divide fractions, there's a rule. You keep the first, you flip the second, and you change that to multiply. It might be nicer to kind of come off to the side and work that out. So 11 over 24. Flip the second, we change it to multiply. And now look, we have bikini numbers right here. 4 and 24, they both divide by 4. That's a 1, that's a 6. So that is 11 on top. When we multiply 11 times 1, 6 times 1, so the answer is 11 over 6. But that is improper, so we make that 1 and 5/6, and that is the correct answer to this one. All right. Next, let's try one more with the fractions. So here we go. We have this plus this times, oh, we have brackets. Got to do the brackets first, right? To keep this nice and clean, look, we have a subtraction. So we have to find common denominators, right? So this is actually not a hard one because I want to find what number do they both go into, and they both go into 16. So I'm going to just make that a 16 just by going like this, keeping it nice and clean. So if I change 8 times what is 16, that's 8 times 2. So 7 times 2 is 14, right? So 14 sixteenths take away 6 sixteenths, right? Just going to write the work here. So that looks like that's 18 sixteenths, right? You keep the bottom, 16, and you only subtract the top. 14 take away 6 is 8. Now, divide these both by 8 because they will reduce. This actually reduces to a half, right? So everything in the bracket here will reduce. The answer is a half. Recopy everything else. 4/5 plus 3/4 times 1/2. And notice I can remove the brackets once I have one answer in there. So now I have adding and multiplying. You always multiply first. Look for bikini numbers. There are none. So basically, recopy everything else. 4/5 plus this answer, 3/8. Okay, so now I have adding. This is probably hard to do here, so I want to keep it nice and clean, kind of come off to the side. And 4/5, add 3/8, right? And I'm going to add them. Look for a common denominator. What number do they both go into? They both go into 40. So we change the bottom number to 40. So 8 times 5 is 40. So 3 times 5, 15. 5 times 8 is 40. So 4 times 8 is 32. Right? Remember, when we keep fractions, add fractions, we keep the bottom number. So that's a 40. And we simply add the top. 32, 15, adding those, you get 47. That's the answer, but that's an improper fraction, so we write that as a mixed number. That is 1 and 7/40, and that is our answer. All right? So sometimes we get word problems where we have to use our knowledge of order of operations. So here's one. Billy, Bobby, and Brady were brothers, and they had some money. Their dad told them to take a quarter of their total and spend it equally at their local 7-Eleven store. How much money will each boy receive? Okay, so the first thing it's telling us to do is we have to add, I guess I should tell you how much each of those boys has. I kind of forgot that. Okay, so let's assume that Billy, that has to be given, right? So Billy has 16, let's say Bobby has 25, and let's say Brady is just a little guy and he only has $3, okay? So that you have to know that or else you wouldn't be able to solve it, okay? So this is how much money they've got. Now their dad tells them to take a quarter of their total, spend it equally amongst themselves at the 7-Eleven store. How much money will they get? So to write the sentence, which is always what you have to do when you're doing order of operations, so obviously we have to add these up first. So 16 plus 25 plus 3. We have to place that in brackets because Dad says take a quarter of their total. Now in school we learned that a quarter of a number means multiply when you see the word of. A quarter of something means multiply by a quarter. You notice that if we did not put the brackets in, order of operations says we would multiply. If we didn't have these brackets, we would have multiplied the 3 times a quarter first, right? But the brackets show that we have to add this up first, then we multiply by a quarter. And then finally he says, spend it equally. Spending it or dividing something equally means we are dividing amongst the 3 boys. So we are dividing it in 3. So this is what basically is the problem. The boys have all this money. Dad says take a quarter of it and then divide it in 3. Now, let's figure this out. First thing we got to do is add up all these numbers. So when we're adding and adding, we can do all this all at once, right? So I'm going to add all of these up, and that looks like 44, right? And I don't need the brackets anymore. So 44 times a quarter, then divide 3. Next step, times or divide. Left to right, you always times. So look, put a 1 there. We can multiply. We got bikini numbers. 4 and 44, they both divide by 4. That's a 1. That becomes 11, right? So this first step is 11 divided by 3, right? 11 divide 3. We keep the first, right? If this is like fractions, 11 over 1 divide 3 over 1. We're going to look at it fractionally. We keep the first. We flip the second. That's a 1 and that's a 3. We flip it and we multiply, right? Looking for bikinis, don't have any, so that's equal to 11 over 3, and that works out to be 3 1/3 each. If we write it as number $3.33 roughly, that is how much the boys would each get because they're splitting $11 amongst themselves, right? Anyways, hopefully that helps you understand, and the order of operations now doesn't seem so tough. Have a good night.